Hi, my name is Lisa. I work with the Museum of Youth Culture and I've been one of the curators on the exhibition. The Museum of Youth Culture is an emerging museum that's all about celebrating the everyday experiences of growing up and looking at that history of the teenager in the UK over the last 100 years. Now, at the Museum of Youth Culture, we're really excited to be doing our first major exhibition here at the Herbert. Grown Up in Britain, 100 years of teenage kicks delves into a century of youth culture stories through our collections, as well as the collections of the Herbert and the Coventry Transport Museum, as well as thousands of people that have submitted to the museum as part of our Grown Up in Britain campaign. So for the last 5 years, the Museum of Youth Culture has been going across the country asking people, what is it like growing up in Britain? Tell us about those teenage stories. And this exhibition is our first attempt to try and put all those stories together. 100 years of youth culture is a pretty huge task to try and fill, but we're not going to try and tell you everything. Instead, what we're going to show you is those different key moments and stories that people have shared with us. Whether that is home life and family and going to school, down to your Saturdays when you're starting to get that sense of independence and you're going out with your mates, finding ways to fill the time, or even going for your first pint when you turn 18, up to the protest movements that young people have pushed forward over the last 100 years. And what we're really looking at is, while a lot of things has changed, those core experiences of being young and being a teenager haven't really changed that much at all. Now, one thing that Grown Up in Britain really aims to do is look at our perceptions of young people and see how we form them and where they've come from. And a real starting point for us and for the work we do at the Museum of Youth Culture was a 2011 survey that found that out of all the nations in Europe, the UK has the most negative opinion of its young people. And I think a lot of that comes from how we represent young people in the media. And this motorbike we've got here speaks to that issue a little bit. In 1961, this appeared on the cover of a Daily Mirror, and it was this big expose on this new teenage subculture of young people racing around on motorbikes, causing havoc wherever they went. And it caused a real moral panic around this youth subculture. And we see these moral panics time and time again through the archive and how young people are portrayed. So we hope that looking at these portrayals and looking at people's personal memories starts painting a bit of a different picture. So becoming a teenager, you start getting that sense of independence and freedom and being able to, go out on the weekend with your best mates. But it's also taking those first steps into adulthood and responsibility. And a big part of that is having your first job. So our section Skint and Minted is all about that first step into the kind of world of adulthood with employment. We've got some lovely photographs here from Birmingham, from an apprenticeship training school. We've also got those more casual Saturday jobs like working down at the local market. Now, it's not all fun and games, and some of the photographs in this section talk a bit more specifically about protest movements related to employment. So we've got an apprentice strike here, and above that we've got a photograph of nurses asking for fair pay. And it's quite interesting because although some of those photographs were taken over 50 years ago, they still really resonate today. Now, the place we probably spend most of our time, whether we like it or not as teenagers, is at school. So our section Classroom Culture looks at the experiences of being a teenager and going to secondary school. And that's changed a lot over the duration of this exhibition. Where we start in the 1920s, the school leaving age was 12. Now that is 18. So we explore some of those changes in education. But whilst it's something that we have to do, young people always find ways to make it their own and make it fun and rebel a bit. We've got some lovely objects that speak to that. We've got an amazing school satchel from the 1970s that's been graffitied all over. It's Joan's bag, although we don't know who Joan is. It's dedicated to Ed, to reggae, to ska. We've also got our school leavers t-shirt. It's such a rite of passage to leave school, and I just love the little message it says on the pocket, which says be bold, be strong, and keep learning, which I think is just so lovely. And one of the places where we've actually received a lot of public submissions is teenage bedrooms, and they're one of my favourite photographs that we get sent in by the public because you can really trace that history across generations, popular culture, music, movies, how that's changed over the years. So we've got a teenage bedroom set up with a nice comfy bed to sit on as well, exploring the history of the teenage bedroom, because it's such a vital space, you know. It's where you can start really experimenting for the first time, whether you're singing along to your favorite tracks or you're starting to take the new music you like and plastering it all over your walls, kind of curating your sense of self. You know, maybe it's where you game from with your mates. You log on online, or you have your record player and you listen to your favorite tunes. One of the things that people talk about most when we ask them about growing up and being young is music. They tell us about the bands that they love, the songs that they reminisce about, and their favorite gigs and venues that they would go to. And a really big change, again, that we've seen over the course of this exhibition is how music consumption has changed from something that was very much out loud, you know, saving up for your first record, to something that we can carry around in our pocket and find online and listen to whatever we want. And we wanted to reflect some of those changes in some of the objects. We've got an amazing Dansette record player from the 1950s, that's part of the Herbert's collections. That was when record players started to become a bit more portable and a bit smaller, so you might actually have one in your bedroom if you were lucky, instead of having a shared family one. But the second case really looks at more music-based consumption when we started to be able to carry music around with us. And that might have been having a boombox that you could play your favorite cassettes in or tune into the radio. But I think what's really interesting is those really small, little personal speaker phones that you could listen to. So, you know, having your first little Walkman and you could choose your own music. No one else could hear what you're listening to. You can kind of be in your own little world. And we see that evolution through to the Discman and then the iPod. And now we all have music on our smartphones. So it's been quite a big change over the years. We've got some amazing objects in this gallery that speak particularly to our first wheels and how we get about as young people. And we might start with, you know, a skateboard or some roller skates or your first bicycle that you learn to ride. But as we get older, we can start taking tests and drive things that are a bit faster and maybe a bit more exciting and could probably also get you a little bit further, whether that is a scooter or a motorbike or driving your first car. Now, kind of linking the day and the night in what has become a pretty big British tradition is festival culture, and we've got a section that explores that experience of going to your first festival, whether that is a 3-day weekend where you're probably knees deep in mud and struggling through by the end, down to going to Notting Hill Carnival or other carnivals across the UK, or your first Pride Parade. And dotted throughout the exhibition as well, we've got our public submissions. So you'll find these amazing corkboards that are covered in photographs that have been sent in by members of the public. We're here for 8 months, so this exhibition will continue to grow and you can still send in your photographs to be part of it. If you go to museumofyouthculture.com/Coventry, there's a really easy submissions form and you can send in your own photographs. And so we go from the day into the night. As you get older, you start being able to claim more and more of the nighttime. You might have sleepovers at your friend's house. You know, maybe then you can come home after tea time instead of before tea time. And then eventually you're old enough to actually go out, go to the pub, go see your favorite band live, maybe go to an all-night rave and not come back until the morning. We've also got an amazing collection of ticket stubs and rave flyers and other posters that talk about how do we actually get to those spaces in the first place? How do we find out about these amazing nights? How do we discover new music? And the real excitement that comes with that. One of the things when we look at youth culture histories is that it's very often told through subcultures and music and fashion. So what we did at the beginning of this year is we did a big call out inviting people to send us their band t-shirts. Now I'm wearing my Black Sabbath t-shirt, which is a bit of a coincidence, but I've actually also got one of my t-shirts up at the top there, an Iron Maiden t-shirt. And it was just such a great way to show people what I was into, a badge of honor to say that I'm part of the club. Now, arguably one of the things that has changed the most for young people is changes in technology. And we had to talk a little bit about that in the exhibition and looking at how that's changed. And the big thing that we focused on is phones and how we communicate with people. You know, it had to be this thing where you were hogging the phone line and fighting over who could call their best friend that evening. But nowadays, teenagers have a phone in their pockets. It means they can constantly communicate with their friends, and it's really affected how young people can stay in touch with each other even when they're not together. And it really allows us to network internationally. So we've got some lovely photographs and objects that talk to this evolution. But as a photographic archive, and mainly photographic archive, we also wanted to speak to the changes in photographic technology, especially with our public submissions. As you move through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, we start getting more and more submissions because camera technology was just becoming more readily available. And we've got some of those kind of different changes in photographic technology in a case here. And one of my favorite ones is a little Instamatic. It's like a really 110, really strange looking camera that's quite long and thin. And it makes these really lovely little snapshots, but was just something you could put in your back pocket, walk out, and not dissimilar to having your camera phone in your pocket. Now, we all remember our first love, whether we are still with them or whether we were unceremoniously dumped when we were younger. And particularly as teenagers, we really experience those emotions really strongly, whether that is having a crush on somebody or going on your first dates, spurred endless songs, poems, it's been written about. So of course we had to talk about it in the exhibition. We've got some lovely photographs and stories of first boyfriends and girlfriends and that really exciting time. But we also wanted to look a little bit about the inequities in first love, and particularly looking at LGBTQ rights and how those had to be fought for and where we've come to today. Both looking at the celebratory side of that, but also looking at the fact that that fight isn't over yet. Now, young people have a really acute sense of awareness about the injustices in the world, and quite often they are leading or at the forefront of grassroots protest movements. To kind of really make that pop, we worked together with an amazing street artist called N4T4, who used our archive as a collection to create a protest scene within which we've projected photographs from the collections. They look at movements all the way from kind of post-war, anti-war movements up into the big marches that we've seen during lockdown, whether that is Black Lives Matter, in support of trans rights, or looking at the safety of women and reclaiming the night. Our experiences of growing up and being young are some of the most evocative ones that we carry with us throughout our lives. And in many ways, this exhibition is starting to pull together all those different stories and reflecting on those memories that we really keep with us. Now, I'm stood in front of the Banner of Youth, which was a collaboration with Accumulate London and Crisis in Coventry, alongside Sadie Williams Studio, where we work with people affected by homelessness to create patches that were inspired by their memories of being young. And some of it looks at more general culture, like game culture and some of the favorite games that they played. Some point to really specific memories, like a beach one of the participants would go to with their grandmother. We were really keen to look at some of the voices that aren't always reflected in museums and galleries. Now, Grown Up in Britain, as it says in the title, looks at experiences of growing up across the UK. But as we're in Coventry, we did really want to pull out that Coventry story. So at the beginning of 2022, we've been going across Coventry, inviting people to share their photographs and their memories of growing up. So in the Grown Up in Coventry section, we've got lots of amazing stories of people telling us about their Coventry, where they used to go out. And this is a section that's really going to grow across the exhibition. So if you've got some amazing Coventry memories that you want to be part of the exhibition, please share them with us. Now, you can even bring along your photographs to the exhibition to be scanned. We've got this amazing scanning booth where you just literally pop your photograph underneath here, take a picture, and it goes straight in on the projection wall on the other side. Grown Up in Britain, 100 Years of Teenage Kicks is open at the Herbert Art Gallery and Museum from the 1st of July till the 12th of February. We hope you come check it out.